Hi guys, today we're going to be going over the notes for lesson 2.3, and this lesson will be on one of our 4 types of transformations. This is called reflections. So let's start with the definition of a reflection. A reflection or a flip, just a reminder that you can capitalize the FL in reflection to remind yourself that this is a flip. It is a transformation in which a figure is reflected in a line called the line of reflection. A reflection creates a mirror image of the original figure. So if you look at this example to the right, we have the line of reflection right here. And this red image is flipped over that line to create a mirror image on the other side. So again, whatever you start with is called the pre-image. And what you end up with, we just call the image. A reflection is when the pre-image is flipped over a line of reflection to create the image. It looks like a mirror image on the other side. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at example 1, identifying a reflection. So in example 1, we want to tell whether the blue figure is a reflection of the red figure. Okay, so the red figure is our original. It is our pre-image. And I want to know if the blue figure is a reflection of that. If I were to flip this red figure over this line of reflection, I would get the blue image on the other side. That is a mirror image. So this would say, yes, this is a reflection. Because the blue image is a mirror of the red. Now, if we look at the second example here, example B, I want to see if this red pre-image would create the blue image. If I were to flip it over this line of reflection. If I were to flip this red image over, it would not create the blue image, right? It would not look like a mirror image or a reflection. So for B, we would say no. This is not a reflection. Because if the red image, or I'll call it pre-image, were flipped, the blue image would be pointing left. And I want you guys to just describe this in your own words, okay? So when you explain, I want you to just use your own words to describe why it is or is not a reflection. But when I see this, I can see that if we flipped that red image, the blue image would have the arrow pointing to the left, not to the right. I'm going to have you guys try these problems on your own. Once you have tried the problems, go ahead and return to this video and we'll go through examples 2 and 3. Before we jump into the next 2 examples, let's go through this key idea. We're going to talk about reflections in the coordinate plane. So now that we've learned how to identify a reflection, let's talk about how we could actually plot the points for a reflection in the coordinate plane. So to reflect a figure in the x-axis, now it uses this word in. I think most of us might say over. What they're really doing is they're reflecting the figure over the x-axis. It's being flipped over the x-axis, but this is the terminology that you will see used. So to reflect a figure in the x-axis, take the opposite of the y-coordinate. To reflect a figure in the y-axis, or flipped over the y-axis, take the opposite of the x-coordinate. Okay, so let's talk about what this means. The original here is labeled as A, B, and C. okay? We have point A, we have point B, we have point C. I'm just going to go ahead and label point A. A looks like it's at -3, 1. It says if we were trying to flip this image over the x-axis, we would take the opposite of the y-coordinate. So A prime would be -3, -1. The opposite of 1 is -1. Okay, so that's how we go from 1 to -1. We're just taking the opposite. That's how we reflect it over the x-axis. Now to reflect it over the y-axis, we're taking the opposite of the x-coordinate. You can use a double prime to show the next figure. And now we're taking the opposite of -3, which is +3. Okay, so a double prime is at 3, 1. Another important note before we move on to example 2, it says in a reflection, the original figure and its image are congruent. So you can see that all of these are congruent. They are all the same size and shape. They are just flipped. Let's take a look at example 2, reflecting a figure in the x-axis. The vertices of a triangle are A, -1, 1, B, -1, 3, and C, 6, 3. Draw the figure and its reflection in the x-axis. What are the coordinates of the image? Okay, so I'm going to use blue here, and I'm going to start by just drawing the vertices. Okay, so the vertices for A, B, and C. The first is at -1, 1. When I plot the point, I'm going to label it as A. The next one is at -1, 3. I'm going to label that B. And the third point is at 6, 3. And I'll label that as C. From here, I want to connect my vertices, form a triangle. All right, and now I want to draw its reflection in the x-axis, or in other words, over the x-axis. So now I'm going to take each of these points and I'm going to take the opposite of the y-coordinate. Remember, when we flip something over the x-axis, we take the opposite of the y-coordinate. Okay, so you're taking the opposite of the y-coordinate when it's the x-axis. Okay, so kind of opposite of what you might think. We have -1, and the opposite of 1 is -1. B prime, we're going to keep the x-coordinate the same, -1, and take the opposite of the y-coordinate, -3. And C prime, we're going to keep the x-coordinate the same and take the opposite of the y-coordinate. Now I can plot these 3 points, and it will be a reflection over the x-axis, or in the x-axis. A prime is -1, 1, -1, -1. I'll label that as A prime, -1, -3. And that is B prime, 6, -3. And that is C prime. And again, I'm just going to connect the vertices to form my triangle. Okay, and now you can see that this is a perfect mirror image over or in the x-axis. We're going to go ahead and move on to the last example, where we're reflecting a figure in the y-axis. So it says the vertices of a quadrilateral are P, it gives the point, Q, it gives the coordinates, R, it gives the coordinates, and S, and it gives us coordinates. Draw the figure and its reflection in the y-axis. So we're going to set up a table just like we did yesterday. This is another way to model this so you know where to plot those points. We already wrote down the vertices of P, Q, R, S. Those were given to us in the problem. Now we know that in order to reflect this over or in the y-axis, we need to take the opposite of the x-coordinate. Okay, so in the last one, we were reflecting it over the x-axis. So we took the opposite of the y-coordinate. Now it's flipped. We're taking the opposite of the x-coordinate. So instead of -2, the opposite of that would be 2. We leave the y-coordinate alone. The opposite of -1 would be 1. We leave the y-coordinate alone. The opposite of -4 would be 4. We leave the y-coordinate alone. And the opposite of 4 would be 4. We leave the y-coordinate alone. I'm sorry, the opposite of -4 would be 4. Okay, so we take the opposite of each. So P prime is 2, 5. Q prime is, whoops, where's my undo? It's 1, 5. R prime is 4, 2. And S prime is 4, 4. Right, and now I'm just going to plot each of these on the coordinate plane along with the original figure to show that reflection over the y-axis. So I'll plot the original figure first. I'm going to use blue to plot these points, P, Q, R, and S. P is at -2, 5. Label it P. Q is at -1, -1. R is -4, 2. And S is -4, 4. Okay, we're going to go ahead and connect those points to form our quadrilateral. Okay, and then when I plot these next 4 points, it should be a perfect reflection over the y-axis. So we have 2, 5, 1, 5, oh, and you can see that I made a mistake here. I'm going to take out my eraser. The y-coordinate should not change. The y-coordinate for Q was not 5. The y-coordinate for Q was -1, so it should remain -1. That makes more sense. So this is a good way to pick up when you're making a mistake. If you go to plot the point and you say, wait a minute, that's definitely not a reflection over the y-axis. I must have made a mistake. Let me go check my work. All right, so Q prime we're going to be putting at 1, -1. That looks like a reflection. Q prime, there we go. For 2, this is R prime. And for 4, this is S prime. And then I can go ahead and connect them to form my quadrilateral. My lines are not very straight. I should have used the straight line tool. Try one more time. It's a little bit better. All right, and we can see that this is a perfect reflection over that y-axis or in the y-axis. All right, you can tell just by looking at it, hey, it was 2 points over. Now it's 2 points to the right of the y-axis. It was 2 points to the left, moved it 2 points to the right. Okay, so that's why we're changing that x-coordinate. We're moving it left and right to flip it over the y-axis. All right, you guys are going to finish up by completing the on your own problems at the bottom on the last page. And your homework will be in Big Ideas. Have a great day, everyone.